Okay, we're all fired up. That's good news. I'm just going to check to make sure that everything is working correctly. This is another Dungeons & Dragons 5e combat workshop where I go over sort of the basics of how to use your characters in combat. And I'm only dealing with level 1 characters, but that sound check's good, so we'll get started. I'm going to obviously demonstrate everything today. I'm not going to just talk about it and show you little pretty pictures, although it looks like that's what I'm doing right now, but I'm not. That's not the case at all. So for those of you who are watching this or re-watching this video, you'll find the start time down in the description once this gets published by YouTube. If you're watching my live streams for the very first time, normally I do my presentation first and I answer any questions or respond to any feedback you might have in the live chat at the end of my presentation. And make sure you type in your feedback reasonably quickly. As soon as I start signing out and saying, Anna, please share and like this video, then you want to be typing in there so that I don't finish all my bits and pieces near the end. Okay, so let's get on, because we're supposed to be showing you how to actually use the Warlock at level 1. Very basic stuff. So let's get started. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and this is a Dungeons & Dragons 5e combat workshop, and I'm going to cover the Warlock at level 1. I've already covered other characters. I've covered the Monk at level 1. I believe I've done a video on the Fighter at level 1 as well. Very sort of basic rudimentary mechanics. Warlocks are something that really, they are a spellcaster, but a relatively simple and not such a complex spellcaster to deal with, because you just don't have that many options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a character sheet from the Dungeons & Dragons 5e website, the official Dungeons & Dragons website. I will provide down in the description a link to this particular character sheet. So all of my numbers and specs that I'm using for the character that I'm playing right now are taken from the sheet. So if you have any questions with regard to the numbers that I'm quoting or using, then that's where you'll find your information to corroborate that's how it's supposed to work, or that's characters' stats are. So all of that's there, will be provided. And today we are going to jump into our first lineup, which is basically a small combat encounter with some skeletons. And I'm going to open up our scene as I normally do with a short description, and then I will go through the process of running a combat. So given the situation that we have here, we have a Warlock called Wally the Warlock. Let's call him Wally the Warlock. I don't know why I'm calling him Wally the Warlock, but I am. Wally the Warlock comes across a cave and he wanders on in. And he's wandered into this cave and he's exploring the location. He's noticed that there seems to be some boulders in different locations around the cave, and there's some bones that are scattered everywhere. Included in that is some skeletons. Now, I'm not saying skeletons as in skeleton monsters, but you can see down here there seems to be some sort of a statue. So he ventures down this way. You can see that there are what look like a collection of bones and two what seem to be relatively well-formed skeletons, not completely joined together, but relatively joined together. And he starts making his way towards that particular location because the statue has some glowing runes around it. Now while he's doing that, suddenly the bones start to knit themselves together and pull themselves up. And there's a horrible grin on both of their faces as they seem to draw what look like a bunch of very rusty, old-looking swords from the rubble and the bones that are around them. So this is our opening scene. They are wearing what looks like scrappy bits of armor. It's not complete. Obviously their bodies have been lying there for some time, so they're pretty much decomposed. So we're going to roll initiative like we always do. I'm going to use the black dice to represent the initiative for our skeletons over here. Now I'm using the skeleton from the Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual 5e, but I'm actually using the stat block straight from the back of the Lost Mine of Phandelver for anybody who was wondering what's an easy way of getting hold of those sorts of things. You can also download the DM guide to access that sort of stuff if you wanted to. So we roll a 20-sided dice. We add their initiative modifier, which is their dexterity modifier. It's a +2 for the skeletons. So I rolled a 14. I add 2 to that, and that comes to a grand total of 16. So that is their initiative. I'm going to place it right here so you can see it clearly. Hopefully you can see it clearly. So their initiative has been rolled. Now I'll just put the miniatures up because they are actually standing now. And now I roll for our Wally the Warlock. He's going to roll a 20-sided dice. His initiative is a +2 because his dexterity modifier is a +2. So I roll 20-sided dice. I rolled a 6. It's not very high. Okay, so 6 + 2 is 8, and hopefully I can find the 8 relatively quickly. There we go. All right, so I'm going to place Wally's initiative over here. So you can see he's scored a lot lower than the skeletons. Now, whoever gets the highest number is the one that goes first. And now, when it comes to a tie, if you ever have a combat take place and both players wind up getting a score for their initiative, which is exactly the same, you guys just decide amongst yourselves who's going to go first and who's going to go second. You can roll off a 20-sided dice if you want to, but it's completely up to the players how they manage that. When there is a tie between the DM's monsters and the character, that's a little bit different. The DM gets to decide how that's going to work, and the DM can just say, I'm going to go first, or they might use a roll-off. We had a bit of an argument about this just recently at my game table, so I'm going to bring it up right now. So that means, unfortunately, the skeletons get to act first. Now, the skeletons aren't particularly smart. They just really sort of go through rudimentary instructions. And Wally the Warlock doesn't know that the instructions they've been given is anybody who enters the cave, attack. That's their single goal. So they take their swords. They're going to move towards Wally the Warlock. They move 30 feet, so we move 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Don't need to move very far, but we can move a little bit further if we really wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stay there. Okay, and then we move the next one. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. He gets it into melee with Wally the Warlock, and now we can make some attack rolls. Now they have skeletons on their stat block have access to a short bow or a short sword. I'm going to just use their short sword attack. So we're going to grab that, and we're going to roll a 20-sided dice to make the attack roll, and we're going to add their attack modifier, which is a +4. Sorry, that's their proficiency, which is essentially 2 plus their dexterity modifier, and that's it. Sometimes monsters work out slightly differently. That's usually how you work out something like an attack with a character, but it can vary with monsters. But anyway, it's a 20-sided dice plus 4 for their attack. So I roll their attack. I got a 15, which means I add 14 to that. That's a 19. Now 19 is greater than the armor class of our Warlock Wally. And that means if you get equal to or greater than, you're going to strike your target. Okay, so they got a 19 as their attack score. So his armor class is only 14, so it's much greater. So they definitely do damage, the first one. So roll your damage. Roll a 6-sided dice because that's what the short sword is. It's going to be a 6-sided dice plus 2 for the damage. I rolled a 4 and add 2, that's 6. And that's the damage that is done, slashing damage to Wally. Now Wally has 10 hit points. Our Warlock has 10 hit points. I'm going to use this dice here to represent that. Move that out of the way. I'm going to place it right beside him so you can see what's going on. And he's got 10 hit points. He's lost 6 hit points, which means he now has 4 hit points. And I'll just find a 4. She's down to 4 hit points. Okay. Now there's no surprise involved in this situation. It's not like the skeletons have done anything that there's no surprise. We just rolled initiative and away we go. It is possible right now for Wally to have used what's called a reaction. That's their hellish rebuke spell as a reaction to actually cast that. But he's not going to do that just yet. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to make the second attack with the skeleton. and hopefully it hits. Okay, alright, so I've rolled both dice at the same time just to speed things up. So I rolled a 10 on the 20-sided dice. I add 4, comes to 4 10s, 14. 14 is the armor class of Wally the Warlock. So that will hit. It needs to be equal to or greater than. So what Wally's going to do is use his reaction. When somebody strikes him, he can activate his hellish rebuke. He only has access to one level 1 spell, and so we're going to activate that right now and use that. Now hellish rebuke works like this. It's a reaction to use it. They need to make a dexterity saving throw, so the skeleton who's been attacked needs to make a dexterity saving throw. But in any case, no matter what, some damage is going to be done. So I'm going to grab a 20-sided dice and we'll make a dexterity saving throw for our skeleton. It's going to be pretty simple. It's not very hard for our skeleton. It's just going to be a 20-sided dice plus 2 for their dexterity. They don't have any bonuses to this. So I rolled a 4 plus 2, comes to a grand total of 6. The DC that Wally has is a 13. So the skeleton needed to get 13 or more to be successful. He has failed. Therefore, he's going to take all of the damage that Wally does with hellish rebuke. So hellish rebuke is got a range of 60 feet. He needs to see the attack take place. They don't need to be up close. They can be further away and shooting at him. But in this case, we're going to roll 2 10-sided dice. And he's going to take all that damage. So I rolled a 7 and a 5. Now with hellish rebuke, you don't add anything else to it. I know a lot of people can get confused about this, like, hang on Fred, don't I add something else to this particular roll? But if you have a look on page 250 of the player's handbook, oops, sorry, book's in the way. So page 250 of the player's handbook, you'll see that it says it takes 2d10 fire damage on a failed save. There's no mention of adding any kind of modifier. So it's just the dice rolls. So that's how much damage is going to take place. So 5 plus 7 is a grand total of 12. So the skeleton takes 12 damage. Now skeletons have 13 hit points. So this skeleton is now sitting on only 1 hit point. Almost destroyed, but not quite. But Wally's not safe yet because that attack, that hit, is still going to do some damage. Now I rolled a 4 on the damage, and I add my plus 2, that's 6, and of course 6 is going to be more than enough to push Wally the Warlock down to 0 hit points. He's now on his face, unconscious, and that's going to tend to happen if you face 2 skeletons on your own. So that's how the hellish rebuke spell works. Now that Wally's used that spell, it's going to take a short rest, and he's not going to be able to do it right now because he's out of commission, and he might not survive this encounter, but essentially you need to take a short rest or a long rest to get access to your spells again. It's one of the things that Warlocks have that make them sort of like, they burn or blow all their good spells, usually in the first combat, and then they need to rest again. Unless they're just using things like their cantrips. Okay? Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to backtrack things a little bit. I'm going to go backwards and say, okay, nobody actually took any damage, and we'll just push all that out of the way for now. I'm going to move Wally back up, and I'm going to indicate how your Eldritch Blast works. Now I've already done a video on Eldritch Blast for those of you who want to watch it. It's out there, it's been published for some time. Okay, so we'll move that out of the way. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just switch the numbers on here. I'm going to say that our skeleton's actually got an initiative of 8. Just for the sake of being able to have Wally get the first go. And Wally got the 16. Okay, so we're switching them around a little bit, just so that Wally gets to go first in the combat. Okay, so how does something like your Eldritch Blast work? It's relatively simple. All you need to do is be within range. He's in range, he can see his target, which is good. Any one of these is going to be perfectly fine. There might be some cover involved, but all you need to do is move to make sure that there's no cover involved. Okay, very, very simple. He's within range, which is 120 feet. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll, it's an action to perform the spell. So we roll our attack roll, because it's a spell attack roll. You're adding +5 for Wally, because it's your proficiency modifier, plus your charisma modifier for casting spells with a Warlock. So we roll our 20-sided dice to make our attack first. Actually, oops, wrong dice. Over here, back over here. Grab that one. So I rolled an 8. Okay, I rolled an 8. I add my 5. And it comes to a grand total of 13. The armor class of a skeleton that he's targeting is actually 13 exactly, so that's equal to. It wasn't greater than, but it doesn't need to be, only needs to be equal to. So he hits the target, and now we roll for damage. And all you're going to do is roll a 10-sided dice. That's a D10, and they'll take 10 force damage. There's no half damage or anything like that. You just, that's it. There's no modifier added to that. So I roll my dice and I get a grand total. Now I'll just make sure I turn that back to a 13 so that you can see that was what the attack was. Okay, AC of skeletons was 13, attack was 13, equals, so it hits. So I rolled a 4. So the skeleton takes 4 damage. And as we discussed before, skeletons have 13 hit points. So 13 minus 4 comes down to a 9. So one of these skeletons now is sitting on 9 hit points. Pretty simple. It's not particularly difficult. It's actually relatively simple to run a combat and play a Warlock. Now there is another spell that is often used by somebody like this, like a Warlock, and that's your Hex. Now Hex is a great spell, but it's unfortunately a first level spell, and once you use it, if you're first level, you blow that, it's gone, and then you won't be able to use your hellish rebuke. So make sure you have somebody in the front line to protect you if you're going to use it. Otherwise, it's not a wise idea. Stick with using the hellish rebuke to protect yourself if you're going to likely get hit. So we're going to use that now. I'm going to turn back the time again and run yet another combat. Same sort of initiative as I had before, but instead of just going straight for our cantrip, because the thing is with Hex, it's a bonus action to cast, which means we can still use our action to cast Eldritch Blast. Now the benefit of doing this is to increase the damage that you do with your Eldritch Blast or any magic or attack that you make. It's really, Hex applies to any attack that you make. Doesn't matter what type of attack it is, it just says attack. So what we do is we open up our combat. It's Wally the Warlock's turn. You cast Hex. Hex needs to target one creature that you can see. So I'm going to pick this skeleton right here. Okay, and for the it's instantaneous. So it's going to act. Well, it's not instantaneous. It's actually a concentration, and you can move it around. Sorry. You get a 1d6 extra damage every time you strike that skeleton. That's quite a lot of extra damage, particularly at level 1. On top of that, you can choose to apply disadvantage to one ability check that it might make. Now, an ability check is regarding something like a skill check or an ability check. So you just apply that how you want. Now I'm going to apply it. Now a lot of people say, okay, but does that apply to a saving throw? No, an ability check is an ability check, and that's a skill check or an ability check. A saving throw is different again. So what we're going to do is apply it to here, and I'm going to pick something like dexterity, because that's probably going to be the one thing that they're going to utilize the most when it comes to something like other spells I might use. That's usually the best one to go for, is something like dexterity, because a lot of spells require some sort of check with regard to dexterity. So we've applied our extra damage. I'm going to go and cast Eldritch Blast again as if we're starting the combat again. So bonus action. Now I can cast Eldritch Blast as an action only because it's a cantrip. When you cast a bonus action spell, the action that you use to cast another spell must be a cantrip. Okay, so I roll my attack just as before. I rolled a 1. 1 is an automatic miss. So no matter what I do, it doesn't matter what I add to that. It doesn't make any difference. It's just an automatic miss. So we'll roll it again. I got a 17. That's a better example. Okay, so 17 plus our attack modifier for Eldritch Blast, which is +5, comes to a grand total of 22. So if I find the 20, and then I'll put a 2 beside that, that'll give you a better idea of where we're at. And if I can find a 2, there you go, 22. So that's the attack. Now 22 is greater than the armor class of a skeleton, and their armor class is only 13. So equal to or greater than, it hits. So we roll our damage, which is our 10-sided dice, and we also get to add a 6-sided dice because of Hex, because we cast Hex first. Make sure you cast Hex first if you're going to use it. Don't cast it after you've done your Eldritch Blast. Doesn't work that way, okay? So roll both those dice for your damage. I rolled a 7, so that's fantastic. That's 7 force damage, and I get an extra 6, so that's quite a lot. That's more than enough to utterly obliterate our skeleton. Goodbye, skeleton. Now, one of the features to Hex, which is in the bottom section, I believe it's on page 251, there is a section that says, if the target drops to 0 hit points before the spell ends, because it's concentration up to 1 hour, which is a long time, you can use a bonus action on subsequent turns, on your subsequent turn, to curse a new creature. That means that once the skeleton's had its turn, you can then use your bonus action, shift the curse or hex onto that creature, target it so you can do more damage, and when you do your Eldritch Blast, okay, you got your bonus action, you still got your action to cast your Eldritch Blast, you'll be able to blast this thing again. Quite useful, in fact, really useful, and really the only way to get rid of this hex is remove curse. You've got to have remove curse accessible, or the spell has to end in some way, whether Wally the Warlock ends it himself, or he decides to just drop it because he doesn't need to use it anymore. Okay, so that's the basics of running a Warlock in combat. Hopefully I've covered all the things that you wanted me to cover today, and if I haven't, you'll definitely let me know, I'm sure. So yes, that's pretty much all I have for you today. So if you found this useful or informative, please share and like the video. If you like this sort of content, there will be more content like this, so please consider subscribing if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, and hitting the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. If you want to support my channel, you supported my channel by watching this video, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. I have 500 plus more videos, maybe 600 plus videos. There's bound to be something else that I've done that you might find useful, so feel free to go and watch those. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description you will find affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon, where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price as you normally would. Just go through the link and buy what you want. You don't have to buy the thing that I have linked to. Now, this is your opportunity to ask questions, give feedback. Could I have done this better? Did I make a mistake? Very hard to get everything completely right during a live stream, but yeah, this is your opportunity to ask questions. If you're not part of a live stream and you're rewatching this, you can certainly ask me questions down in the comments section. And other than that, that's really all I have to say. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, all right, well, I'm not gone. It might seem like I'm gone, but I'm definitely still here. I'm just fiddling about, as I do. And yes, is there any questions that people have that they would like to ask? this is your opportunity just to sort of, I mean, I really wanted this to be more like a tutorial. Hopefully everything was reasonably clear and not too fuzzy. I did try to make a bit of an effort to actually make sure everything was going to be clear. Doesn't seem to be very much in the chat, so at least it seems to be pretty quiet. I must have done my job correctly, eh? What is likely to happen tomorrow? Normally I tell people what is happening tomorrow. So while you guys are either typing or just listening to me, tomorrow is probably going to be an old live stream that has been rough edited down, and I will release that. I don't know which one it will be. After that, so that's tomorrow, and then the day after I'm probably going to be doing a video for the Dungeon Master. This was really for the players, and I'll be covering monster tactics. I often like to cover monster tactics, and we'll be covering the ogre. I've been avoiding the ogre. I will talk about the monster tactics as a Dungeon Master you can use about 2 days from now, and I will be doing that as a live stream, and I will put it up in advance so you can see it and see the time. It will be pretty much the same time that I do my videos, which is around about now, New Zealand Standard Time. It's about 8 PM New Zealand Standard Time. Okay, well, it's been very quiet in the chat today, so I'm going to just say thank you to everybody and head off, and you guys have a good night, a good day, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is, and I'll catch up with everybody some other day.